world of YouTube, and welcome to List 2 in my final week-long List Week wrap-up decade reflection List 2010s edition thing week. Favorite boss battles of the last 10 years. Now, gaming has been a blast. If you missed my games of the decade list, it's linked in the description. I had a plethora of games to choose from that I played over the last decade that had so many iconic boss fights. It was hard to narrow it down to 11, but I have. So these are my 11 picks. Now remember, these lists are my opinion. Feel free to share yours in the comments down below.
Try this again. So yeah, oh, he puts bombs on.
You guys know I had to put at least one Zelda boss fight on here, and if we're talking classic Zelda boss fights, Link Between Worlds has some of the most fun the franchise has ever seen. Because of the item system in the game, the bosses don't necessarily need to follow any sort of rigmarole when it comes to item usage versus a boss fight. However, Zaganaga from the Desert Palace actually requires the sand rod, and the use of the sand rod is really fun. I like the fact that the boss fight takes place in this quick sand pit, and you need to kind of create platforms to get to Zaganaga, and his attack pattern changes halfway through the battle. It's a fun fight with a cool looking boss that has a really nice looking set piece that has a cool aesthetic to it that I think is one of the most fun the entire game has to present.
Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the.
Now you could argue this shouldn't be on my list because technically I didn't fight this boss, but I will tell you I had an incredible experience watching it be completed. This is probably one of the best bonus bosses I've seen since I first played Kingdom Hearts for the first time. I love that you can just fight this colossal fucking turtle, and it's just sitting there waiting for you to fight after you do the entire Final Fantasy 15 campaign. And it's not an easy fight. I sat there for a good couple of hours, watched my cousin develop a strategy to fight this stupid thing, and it was an incredible watch. This thing hits hard, this thing is hard to hit, and it's an overall fun-looking boss that I still need to conquer myself.
You wasted your time!
Ever since I first saw the kitchen demo to Resident Evil 7, I was terrified of Jack Baker. And playing Resident Evil 7 proper does not ease any of that fear. You encounter him multiple times in the game, and while the chainsaw fight is a close contender for replacing the final fight in the boathouse, the house area, the empty house with the walkways, that's the one I'm talking about. It's a very classic, again, Resident Evil feeling boss fight, but they translated that into the first person incredibly well. I like climbing the ladders and avoiding his attacks while shooting the eye holes that pop up throughout the fight. It's a fun battle that feels like a great send-off to a character that was a looming threat throughout the entire first chunk of the game, and it's pretty fun on top of that.
Wherever these go.
Christian Whitehead knocked it out of the park with Sonic Mania. It's a loving tribute to the 2D Sonic era while adding some features that give some great quality of life improvements to those games. And it also has some loving tributes to those games as well in the classic levels. Specifically, case in point, the boss for this entry, the boss for the Mean Bean Machine section. That was just such a delight to be flying through the stage, only to be greeted at the very end of it with a round of Mean Bean Machine against Robotnik himself. It's a cute little section that isn't really too difficult if you've played a lot of Mean Bean Machine, but it's still a fun little fight nonetheless that feels like just another little wink and nod to the classic era Sonic that everyone who's played this game really, really loves. And they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to go that hard in making a tribute like that, but I really appreciate that they did.
Oh my god, that's not even.
Again, Blasphemous, a game with a handful of challenging, fun boss battles. But personally, my favorite were the three specters in the cloudy area of the game. I was really surprised when I initially walked into the chambers and saw that there was this rising elevator section that had a boss fight that, again, not the hardest one in the game, but was a fun fight nonetheless. I liked that it tested your platforming abilities in tandem with your combat skills and had you manage both of them throughout the entire fight, dodging the three's attacks, the changing attacks, and then coming together to attack you as a whole. It just has its own enough dynamics to keep it interesting and keep it fresh, while also challenging your platforming skills at the same time. It's a nice fight that I feel like just is similar to one that's happening later on in the list, but in a much more dialed back fashion, without losing a lot of the difficulty. I could have picked from a plethora of bosses from Dark Souls. I could have picked the Kings, this Moth, the Gargoyle, but I went with the Capra Demon because the Capra Demon feels like a sort of transition from the first chunk of the game through the next chunk of the game. It's the point where I feel like the already hard difficulty ramps up just a little bit more. It's right before Blight Town, and it's a really tight claustrophobic fight that has you testing your abilities at their hardest. The Capra Demon took me so fucking long to kill, but it was so gratifying when I finally laid him to rest. It doesn't help that he has those stupid fucking dogs that charge at you repeatedly and make the entire fight that much more nightmarish. Fuck you, Capra Demon. You were a big challenge, but you were one that was probably the most gratifying to pass, at least in my initial run of Dark Souls. You could argue against this being considered a true boss fight, but given the whole game is built around you either defeating or escaping from this menace, and that this menace can take any sort of difficulty depending on who's playing him, I'm going to count it as a boss. The Jason from the Friday the 13th multiplayer game. And I'll tell you, some people really get into playing Jason. A little bit of quick little anecdote for you. The first time I ever played this game, I was playing with Shake and a bunch of my other friends from Philadelphia, and he did not tell me he was Jason. And he decided to pick me out, hunt me down, and scare the ever-loving shit out of me. It was terrifying, to say the least, but also showcased the strengths of that game. And it is a memory that has still cemented me to this day and really solidifies why I don't trust anybody when I'm playing a video game. Love you, buddy.
I'm going to die.
Honestly, Spider-Man PS4's boss fights are some of the most underwhelming in the game. However, the Scorpion and Rhino fight is a special slice of awesome. Taking place in the... It's nice to avoid Rhino's attacks while also trying to subdue Scorpion before setting your sights on Rhino himself. It's a great dynamic, the two of them, that presents their own different types of challenge when fighting either and having to dodge both at the same time. It's a fight that I had a lot more fun and I have a lot more memories of leaving Spider-Man PS4 than I do some of the other fights, at least with a positive note. I liked the fight just fine. Doc Ock was pretty fun, but something about the Scorpion Rhino fight just stuck out to me consistently as I look back upon the game with fondness. And I think it's because of that dynamic that gives it that little edge over some of the other fights that may have been pretty quality as well. It's a fun fight, and maybe not the most iconic image-wise, but still one of the most fun to play. Shovel Knight, like a handful of the other games on this list, is packed with a lot of memorable boss fights like Propeller Knight, Inspector Knight, and really most of the guys in the game, but the PS4 exclusive fight against Kratos is so fun. I like that you have to fight him head-on in this condensed arena before taking it to the skies and are falling down perpetually. It's very reminiscent of the Propeller Knight fights in some of the side games, but it's a little harder because Kratos is he's just an angry son of a gun. He's just trying to take you out. And that fight stuck with me because it was not only challenging because Kratos hits hard, but you get a nice reward afterwards getting the Chaos armor for Shovel Knight that shifts the dynamic of the game as a whole. It's a nice little bonus fight in the game that was a delight to unlock and a nice little surprise to uncover. Hollow Knight, a game also known for its crushing bosses. And while the Mantis Lords are not the hardest boss in the game, they are the most fun to learn, in my opinion, because their battle is almost like a dance. You gotta learn the steps, you gotta learn the routine, and while the attacks are heavily telegraphed, it is still hard to dodge some of them, and the ramp up from 1 Mantis Lord to 2 is such a great experience that really filled me with fear and anxiety the first time I played the game. It is so much fun, and it's in a cool stage. I like the sort of stage that's set with the fight against them. It's again, not the hardest boss, but it's the one that I still look back on with the fondest of memories as my favorite in the game thusly far. You know what I'm saying?
I spawned all of these pigs purely to kill them, Amber.
You know, if there's one thing I played a lot of this decade, especially in the first half, it's Minecraft. I mean, Minecraft is such a fun little getaway game. It's a nice game to kind of sit with for a while, maybe come back to every now and again. And when they added the bosses, that was neat. The other bosses, but nothing's going to beat the first one, the dragon. It's just a fun quest to go on, grind for ender pearls, turn them into the ender things in the nether, and go to the thing and fight the dragon. It's a fun quest that is still challenging to go forth, if only because the ender guys still get a little hard, and the guys in the nether also pretty hard to grind for, the blaze rods. So it's a nice challenging quest that doesn't have you do anything too complicated, but it's challenging enough to really entice you to see it to its end. And the dragon fight itself is pretty hard, with the towers you have to take out and climb and destroy the crystals of before tackling the dragon himself. It's got its own little dynamic shifts that I think are really fun. And the dragon himself, he's no joke. He hits hard. He hits so hard, he can kill you. And that's not fun to die to. And you gotta make your way back there, and it sucks. But yeah, the dragon fight, easily the best fight of the decade, just because not only do you have to go through the journey of Minecraft to get to him, but the fight itself is gratifying once you've finished it. And I think that's equally as important as the journey, sometimes.
And that was my list. What did you think about it? Did you like it? Was there a boss that you really loved that I missed? Let me know which one it was in the comments down below. If you did like this list, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, get early access to content, get exclusive content, and help drive the community, it's linked in the description. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. Tomorrow is the final entry in this, the last full week of Decade End Wrap-Up List Week, my favorite films of the 2010s. Hopefully you're excited for that. Either way, I'm going to get out of here. I've been Viral Rack. You get to good days, live situations, and I'll see you another day.